Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Mass Market Madness number 4, where I share with you some of my very favorite affordable tarot and oracle decks. Today, we're going to be talking about my favorite mass market fairy and angel decks. I'm really excited that we're themed for today's Mass Market Madness because I have some angel stuff and some fairy stuff to talk about. And before I do, I just want to say I'm not normally an angel deck person. So the fact that there are any angel decks I like is already kind of a wonder, in my opinion. Now, the first of these that I'm going to share with you is the Angel Tarot by Radleigh Valentine. It was formerly by Radleigh Valentine and Doreen Virtue. Now, here's the situation about this deck before we go any further. At the time I'm recording this, you can still buy this deck. However, Radleigh Valentine has been coming out with some new decks, and as that's been happening, I've noticed that some of the old ones, that even the ones that were rebranded with just Radleigh Valentine's name, but some of the ones that used to be with both Doreen Virtue and Radleigh Valentine, I've noticed them kind of disappearing. So I don't know if this one is going to be going out of print, but I think it's kind of cool and special, and I wanted to share with y'all because I am definitely, like I said, not really an angel deck kind of person, but I really, really enjoy the way that this particular one is done, and I wanted to share it with you guys because it's not what I expected, and I think that's kind of the cool thing. So it does come in a sturdy 2-piece box with this really nice little pocket guidebook that is actually really, really great, but you again, currently can also buy a separate standalone book for this deck called The Big Book of Angel Tarot. As you can see, this copy that I have still has Doreen Virtue's name on it as well as Radleigh Valentine's name on it. This copy was gifted to me. I didn't really even know it existed, and then several people reached out. And I will say this has a lot more information in it than the little pocket-sized guidebook has. So for example, if I go to the wheel card, in the pocket guidebook, you can see that we get a little bit of a message and some additional meaning and a little bit about Archangel Michael, who is represented by this particular card. But in the full guidebook, you get information about what the wheel card means. You also get a section called The Dreamer's Journey, which talks to us about the actual journey of the major arcana, so that's specific to the major arcana. And then you get a bit here about all the symbolism in the card, which I think is really, really great and helpful. And it talks more about Archangel Michael. Then you get some information about the angel number associated with this card. Again, this is a major arcana thing. Some information about the archangel and some astrological information. Now, if we look at the same sort of contrast for a minor arcana card, so let's look at the 10 of water, and we'll talk about the suits in a moment. Again, you get a message and a little blurb on the additional meanings of this card in the little guidebook, but in the big guidebook, you get more about the meaning of what the 10 of water is all about in the tarot. And then in the back page of that, you also get a bunch about the symbolism, a bunch about the angel number, and the astrology. So it's really actually pretty great. There's a lot more in-depth information you get in this bigger guidebook. And if this is the kind of deck that you see yourself working with a lot, I definitely recommend the bigger guidebook if you can get your hands on it. But now let's talk about the actual deck. So it is a glossy deck, but it is really, really pretty. Now it does have giant borders, but there's also some keywords on the cards, which I actually find really good. So through the major arcana, and you'll notice the colored borders are aligned with the suits. So you have this kind of purpley color for the major arcana, a green for the earth suit, a red for the fire suit, this teal color for the water suit, and a blue color. It's kind of close actually to the purple of the major, but that's the blue for the air suit. The suits are named by their elements as opposed to pentacles, swords, wands, etc. So it's really great that way. The borders, like I said, take up a lot of room on the card, but the artwork itself is really pretty, I think. I've never looked at one of these cards and thought, oh man, that's the ugly card. Like, I've never thought that. I think they're all really, really pretty. But what I really love is, especially if you're newer to tarot, in fact, let's look at a couple examples here. So in the minor arcana, you'll get a message at the bottom for what this card is telling you, which is, again, very helpful. If you just want to pull out a deck of cards and do readings for yourself, decks like this that have the meanings right on them can be really actually kind of nice. And even as an experienced tarot reader, I really enjoy working with decks like this sometimes. So here for the 7 of fire, which is equivalent to the 7 of wands, it says, defend your beliefs and decisions, stand your ground, and choose your battles wisely. But when we look at a court card, it's a little bit different. We have the title of the card at the top, just like we did here, but underneath that, we actually get some personality traits for our court card. So our King of Earth is generous, professional, responsible, practical. And that, I'm telling you, is so helpful when you're learning the tarot to have some personality traits for the court cards. And then below that, we still have our message: a successful time, confidently accept opportunities you're offered, and the Midas touch. It's just a really easy deck to read with. The backings are pretty, like they're not my favorite ever, and they're not reversible, but that's okay. Now let's talk about the suits for a moment. And this is one of the things that I think is so cool about a deck that calls itself the Angel Tarot. So in the Angel Tarot, the major arcana, let me pull out one here. The major arcana are all archangels. So the world is Archangel Michael, and then you get your message at the bottom. So the major arcana are archangels. The fire suit are all represented by dragons or dragon-like creatures, which I think is super cool. There's another major. The water suit, oh, this is a bad example. The water suit is mermaids, and the air suit is unicorns. Like, hello? It's so awesome. So here is another major arcana. So we have Archangel Shamuel. Here is the Page of Cups. So we have our mermaid here. There's another archangel. Here's our fire suit. Fire. Still get these dragon-y creatures, right? In the earthly suit, we have fairies. I forgot I hadn't mentioned them yet. So we have fairies in the earth. We have dragon and dragon-like creatures in fire. More fairies. More dragon. And then we have mermaids for water. I just think it's so great. Look at the mermaids. I think it's awesome. And for somebody like me who really loves, like, look at this Two of Air. Oh, the unicorn suit is obviously my fave. The Nine of Air. I think it's interesting that unicorns are the air suit, but it makes sense, right? Because they have the horns. So the horns are standing in, I'm assuming, for the swords. But I really like the theme of this deck. I like how it feels like fantasy, but it's also got that angelic vibe. It's a very gentle deck, but it doesn't feel unbalanced to me, and some gentle decks can feel unbalanced. The cards are a little bigger than standard tarot size. They feel a little bit more oracle sized, although not super huge. It is quite a big deck, or it feels like a big deck. So I don't mind that at all. This is my Peggy bag that I've matched to it with all of its blue and white stars. But I quite enjoy this deck, and it took me a long time to even take a serious look at it, because I was like, oh no, ew, it's like an angel deck. Because I've only recently sort of come to work with archangels at all in my practice, and that's very new for me still. But I actually feel like it's more of a fantasy deck in a way, with the whole fairies, dragons, unicorns, mermaids situation going on, and I really enjoy it. So that is the Angel Tarot. The next deck also has a bit of angelic energy, and that is the Angels and Ancestors Oracle by Kyle Gray. Okay, so look at, this is my feathery bag match for this one. Okay, so this one comes in a 2-piece box by Hay House, and this is their older cardstock. It is a really lovely matte cardstock. Their cardstock has changed recently, so I don't know if this deck itself is still available in that cardstock. Really nice 2-piece box with a beautiful invocation and evocation on the back, which I think is awesome. It also comes with a really nice chunky guidebook, which I'll be honest, I basically never use, because this deck kind of ended up slotting itself into a particular part of my practice, and it hasn't really left that spot since it came in there. But I have also hand gilded this deck by using a gold like paint marker, the kind you have to shake up, to edge the cards, and I did get some wrap on the front, on the back. But I actually think it looks really cool, so I like it. I think the gold wrapping around just gives it this kind of like beat up, worn look that I really like. But this is what the deck looks like. Again, this was their older cardstock. Lovely cardstock. Anyway, here's the cool thing about this deck. It has guardians. They don't call them angels, but they're very angelic looking. And we have, so the Heart Guardian, right? But then we also have icons from other sort of, it feels very multi-faith, if that makes sense. So we have the Lady, who you could see, I suppose, as like an Eve-like reference, but to me she reads like a Celtic goddess of some kind. You also have symbols. So here we have Snake. Here we have a Mother Earth figure. She almost reminds me of like a Pele type figure. She looks like she might be like Hawaiian or something. She's really beautiful. I love her. We have a Father Sky. We have a Lord to match up with the Lady. And there are pairs in here too, which I really enjoy. But the guardians are the angels. And what's neat about that is because there is elemental guardians, which make me think of the guardians of Wicca, where we might have an earth guardian, a water guardian, a fire, air, etc. So we have those. But we also have symbols like here, we have the Great Teacher, who could potentially represent a Jesus-like figure, right? I'm assuming that's who is meant by that card. And we also have seasons. There's something about this deck, but then we have archetypes, like we have the Trader, the Peacekeeper, the Wise One. There's another Guardian, the Medicine Mother, the Shield Maiden. It's really interesting to me, and I've always enjoyed working with it. But what it ended up becoming for me in my practice is a deck that I use pretty much exclusively now in my past life readings that I offer clients. So I'll pull 3 cards from this deck to sort of get a context for whatever life it is that we're going to be peeking into, and it's been really incredible for that purpose. And I think it came into that purpose quite by accident, right? But it's just a really cool deck, and I think it's often overlooked, but I really enjoy working with it. I've had a lot of really wonderful experiences with it, and I think it's got a kind of angelic energy that doesn't feel overbearing if you are the type to feel like angels can be a little bit much sometimes. I feel like the angelic type figures in this deck feel very approachable. They feel very non-denominational, which is really, really nice, and they feel kind of eclectic, and I genuinely appreciate that. Okay, so that's 2 angel decks, and now I've got 3 different picks for fairy decks that I want to share with you today. So the first, and my favorite, if I had to pick one favorite fairy deck in all of my collection, it would be this one. And that is the Tarot of the She by Emily Carding. Now this is a Red Feather Schiffer publication. My deck is trimmed, just so you know. I've taken off the sides of the deck, and then I put this large corner rounder on it. I love how it turned out. I wanted to keep the top and bottoms. I freaking love this deck so much. And I'm going to talk about the cards, but first, let's talk about the guidebook, because the guidebook is incredible and really, really different. So the guidebook for the Tarot of the She has almost a poetic feeling to the writing. I wish I knew how better to describe it. Well, the majors have a poetic style of writing, but then the minors are actually poems. Like the minors actually have, like for example, Warrior 9. All you who my protection seek, from the bravest to the meek, with circles flame my wings of gold, and angel's helm I will enfold. And then you get keywords: protection, preparation, holding ground, tension, and anticipation. Really super cool. Now in this deck, look at this. I have a sticky note in here because I use the guidebook so much when I'm working with this deck that I have a sticky note, because this is a great way to have a bookmark ready to go. So that if you're working on a page, you can just stick it in the book. That's how much I use the guidebook for myself when I read with this deck. But I love it. I also love that it reads really well out of the box. You don't have to look at the guidebook at all if you want to read for others with it and you don't like reaching for the guidebook. But what I love is that the imagery is so expressive, and it's got this kind of wild fae energy. It's not so much the kind of fluffy, light, fluffy kind of fairies. It's like very much wild and powerful and potent. In this deck, the warriors are fire. The majors are major arcana. So we have the Roman numeral for the major. We have warriors for fire. The dancers are water. Water. Oh my gosh, hello? Can we get another suit, please? More dancers. Okay, makers are pentacles. Oh, I know why this is grouped up by... Anyways, makers are pentacles. I think I referenced this deck in my Tarot Bootcamp for Beginners course, which is why some of the cards are still in order, because I haven't used it for myself since then. Dreamers are air suit. But like, look at... And they have keywords. Sorry, I should back up. So, check this out. Let me zoom in a little bit. So, Dreamer 10, Desolation. Maker Princess. Oh, I want to talk about the makers, or the court cards separately here. Dreamer 9 is Nightmare. There's no keywords on the majors, but there are keywords on the minors. So Warrior 4, which is equivalent to the 4 of Wands, is Foundations Blessed. Maker 5, which is like the 5 of Pentacles, is Winter's Bite. Emergence for the 8 of Wands, or the 8 of the Maker 8. Really super cool. One of my favorite tower cards of all time. This deck is so powerful. Pan instead of the devil. Love that. It's really, really great. I love it an awful lot. But let's talk about the court cards, because I think that's one thing that this deck does really incredibly well. So let's find some other courts here. So in the court cards, every single court card has, instead of a keyword, they have a gift. So the Maker King, which would be like the King of Pentacles, has the gift of skill. The Maker Queen, the Queen of Pentacles, has the gift of healing. The Dancer Prince, this is like the Knight of Cups, has the gift of passion. Whereas, oh, that's a regular minor arcana. And then the Maker Princess, who's like the Page of Pentacles, has the gift of creativity. I found that really, really a cool mechanic about this deck. It makes it a lot of fun to work with and read with when you have those keywords to reference. I did find that the borders felt really, really large because they are big black borders just like this. And I think that when I trimmed this, I also took a smidge off the top and the bottom, if I remember correctly. And then you have this sort of Fae symbol. I think this is a Reiki symbol that is on the back. And you can also find this symbol in a lot of the major arcana cards, kind of lurking about. Yeah, so you can see it in the ripples of the water here in the High Priestess card. In the Tower card, you can see it beneath our figure here. In the Fool card, you can see it at the heart space of our Fool. So it's really quite a well done deck with a lot of potency and intensity to it, which I love. And let's actually, while I've got it out, and also hello, bag match, beautiful bag match. Have to point those out because I really love my Peggy bag matches. Let's also talk about the Oracle deck that I feel like pairs the best with this, but also I think the best fairy Oracle deck that ever was, and that is the Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud and Jessica Macbeth. So Brian Froud's artwork, it makes up this deck, and Jessica Macbeth did the text of the guidebook, and I think it was a really powerful combination. I will warn you, this deck does kind of operate on the assumption that fairies exist, and that is a really magical space to step into when you're working with this deck. It assumes that you want to work with the fae, so there's a really heavy magical energy to working with this deck that I think comes through in the writing style of the guidebook, but also Brian's artwork. If you're not familiar with Brian's artwork, it's iconic fairy artwork. He has put out some wonderful art books about fairies. I love that the guidebook that comes with this deck is hardbound. I'm assuming that's still the case, but I have had this particular set since the 90s, so I don't know. At least I assume it was the 90s. Let's check, because I got it. No, I guess it was in the 2000s, because copyright is 2000, so it must have been just into the beginning of 2000 that I got it, because it was fairly new when I got my first copy. This copy specifically. So really, really meaty guidebook with a lot of information for every single card. Like here's card number 22, the Master Maker. And you have 2 full pages, and it's quite a lot. So you have a reversed reading, you also have an upright meaning, and you have like a starter meaning, which is more like your distilled sort of divination message, and I think that's really, really, really well done. These cards have a lot of depth, and I find myself, when I work with them, only pulling like a single card at a time because there's just so much to it. The only complaint I really have about the cards is that the font on the actual card can be really difficult to read, both the number font and the letter font. So sometimes it takes me a minute to figure out what I'm looking at and how to look it up in the guidebook, but they are in numerical order in the guidebook. But let's talk about the cards and my gorgeous bag match, of course, because look, hi, is that not perfect? Anyway. So the Fairies Oracle has these backings. It's a pretty standard tarot size card and a pretty standard sort of, you know, like 300 GSM style cardstock, like nothing super fancy, shuffles really nicely. And then you have all of Brian's beautiful artwork. And these also have a very wild fae. They're not the fluffy kind of fae. You know what I mean? You'll see some adorable fairies in this deck. So I have reversals mixed in because there's reverse meanings in the guidebook. Like, she's cute, right? So I do work with reversals when I'm working with this deck for my own pulls. The Lady of the Harvest. Yeah, this is always interesting. Fairy Guide, which directs you to sort of connect with your own fairy guide, if I remember correctly. She of the Cruach. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. She's one of the singers. The singers is a specific category of sort of light fae in the deck. See, I'm not sure if that says the Pook. I'm not really good with knowing their names. I have to look them up every time. But it's really got, like I said, a wildness and a potency to it. And I actually really had a hard time working with this deck for a long time. And then I worked with it with the Tarot of the She, and suddenly I love it. But it's affordable, it's mass market, just like all the decks I'm sharing with you today. And the fact that you can still get this at such a reasonable price and that it's been out for such a long time, we're talking over 20 years now. The fact that it can stand the test of time in that way, I think really speaks to how wonderful of a deck it really is and how much it's got, how much depth it has and potency. I did have the second deck in this by the same creator, by the same artist, Brian Froud, only he made it with his wife Wendy Froud, and that was the Heart of Fairy Oracle. But I think I just had a hard time for a while. That one was my favorite actually, and then it's like I couldn't work with it anymore. There was something about it that just wasn't working, so I ended up rehoming it. I ended up trading it to Danny, who has it now and loves it. But this is such a cool deck, and it is affordable, like I said, very, very worth your money. Well done. If you're looking for a deck that you can really like dip into and really like sink your teeth into, I think this is a wonderful one. And if you love working with guidebooks, I think you'd probably really enjoy this. Be aware that it comes with a certain amount of woo, like built into the system, but you can always work around that if that's not something that you're into. And if you are into it, it just adds a whole layer of really wonderful magic to the entire experience. But that is the Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud and Jessica Macbeth. All right. That brings us to our final fairy deck, and I would be totally remiss if I did not mention the Shadowscapes Tarot. This is a Llewellyn deck. It comes in a beautiful boxed set with this gorgeous full-size guidebook, or at least it did. You can, for a time, I think you can only get it in just a single deck-sized box with a little white book, and that may still be the case, but at least at the time I'm filming this, there is also a tarot app you can get for like your iPhone or your Android phone or whatever, that has the text of the full guidebook in the app. So for like $3 or $4, the cost of the app, you can access all of the text from the big guidebook. But I do think the deck is really, really beautiful. I have modified mine. I had modified my Fairies Oracle too, by the way. It had like a sand colored edging on it to match the backs. Now with this Shadowscapes Oracle, or Shadowscapes Tarot rather, I actually recently modified it. So I trimmed it to be completely borderless. Love how that turned out. And I edged the sides of the deck in like pastel colors, and then I actually applied a really fine glitter, but much to my disappointment, you can really only see the glitter in really, really good, bright, natural light. Otherwise, it doesn't look like it's there at all, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of like a little surprise that comes out when it's outside in the natural light. But this deck is the artwork by Stephanie. Actually, I should keep us zoomed in. It's artwork by Stephanie Pumin Law, and the guidebook was written, the full-size guidebook was written by Barbara Moore. The guidebook is wonderful. This art, though, is so enchanting. It's also very, very detailed. And my trimmed deck, once I took the borders off, it just made it quite small. It was already small. There was for a while a version from another country you could get. I think it was the Czech edition that was on larger cards, so you had a little bit more. I will say, though, once I took the borders off, I stopped being cranky about the smallness of the images, because for some reason, I think it was the borders that made them seem smaller. Once I took the borders off, they don't seem quite so tiny anymore. Stephanie Pumin Law's artwork is very delicate, and the details and the line work is really, really fine. But you can clearly see, I think, what's happening in each image. Sometimes some of the finer details would, of course, be easier to see on a larger format, but everything's still there. And if you take your time and slow down with this deck, I think it has a lot of really beautiful wisdom to share. And there's something so unique about this particular art style, and it just makes it such a wonderful reader. Now, if you take the entire borders off like I did, then you may want to actually take a fine point silver Sharpie or something, or gold Sharpie, and write the title of each card on it, or the number in a suit or whatever, so that you can remember easier. I find that after I did a deep dive and worked with this deck for an entire month, and I got really comfortable with which card was which. But after a long break, I could definitely tell that there's a few that I would have a harder time with, especially when kind of comparing, like, say, the Emperor or the Empress and, like, some of the Kings and Queens. I would probably have some difficulty. Like, these are our Queen and King of Pentacles, but when they're pulled individually, sometimes they look like the Emperor and Empress, so that can be tricky sometimes with this deck. So if you do what I did and trim it in this way, you might want to add the titles to it, and I may do that at some point, just so that I have that on there. And because all the cards are fairly light, you could probably get away with a black Sharpie to label them. I probably could do that. And I may do that at some point. But it's such a beautiful deck. It was actually a Mother's Day gift quite some time ago, and I do love it. It was my Mother's Day gift when the boys were, gosh, this would have been when the deck first came out, because it was brand new when I got it as a gift. So it would have been, yeah, this is the first edition, 5th printing. So I guess it wasn't that new. 2014. But it looks like, so yeah, and I moved up to Canada in 2006. Anyways, it was a Mother's Day gift. So it's, of course, one that I especially cherish. But it's, again, a very affordable mass market deck. Again, you might not be able to find the full set with the big book. You might just get it in a smaller, like, deck-sized box with a little white book instead. But if you can find this one and it's up your alley, I think it's very well worth it. What's amazing to me about, and what's really fun to me about doing this Mass Market Madness series, and there's my little bag match, it's so cute, and that's a mini bag, actually, because it fits the trimmed deck perfectly. What I love about this series is that I think sometimes we forget, in the realm of all the like pretty shiny new Kickstarter decks and indie decks, I think we often just forget how many beautiful, actually, we'll take the book out of there, how many beautiful, gorgeous, unique decks exist right in the mass market at affordable prices. And I just think that's awesome. So I like to share some of those with you guys. I like to spread the joy and make sure you guys can also find beautiful, affordable tools that you want to work with and enjoy and bond with and so forth. So I really like doing this series. I would always, as always, love to hear what your guys' favorite mass market decks of the moment are in the comments down below, so let us know. As always, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Please do remember to click the like button if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it. Subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget to click the little notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos and my live streams. Thank you all so much for sharing space here, for putting your eyeballs on my channel and on this video. It really means so much, and it really helps this to be something that I can continue to do for a long time. As always, mad love out, especially to my channel members, my sparkly, magical, supportive, and badass unicorns. I love you all. Thank you so much for helping to support this space and help me continue to do this for a long time to come. Thank you again all so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.